II, this was very actively populated with female representatives. So we have half of the participants were women, and they are the only ones who spoke on these 3 sessions. So I'm very proud that the innovative part of the education obviously has a female side of it. So now you have the right and the possibility to ask questions and get good answers. Questions? Marcel?
Yeah, I would like, in particular to Marvin's presentation, do we really find the purpose of theological education along the lines of preparing people for other activities in the society and preparing their character? And, I mean, I did get the feeling that doing education in that way would be a preparatory work for taking on another career and so on. Probably I was wrong. And then if we go in that direction, aren't we becoming an alternative to what the church is supposed to be?
Could you repeat the question for the translation?
2 things is the character education and the virtue education take away some of the responsibilities of the churches. And secondly, isn't theological education becoming a substitute or a complement for the secular education, right? So pretty much this is what was in.
I think we should not, on the one hand, think of theological education as unique, but not unique. Theology is one of the disciplines of the culture of education. And I think as Christians, we believe in education. In particular, as theologians, we believe in the importance of the discipline of theology within education. That's what most of us do. I think the objectives of higher education should be very similar to those of theological education. I think some, in addition, we have additional objectives, but some very similar. And I would agree that common ground between theological education and higher education is found in the education of character and virtue. Clearly, I would argue that we need to make a theological case for what makes what we can do unique. What is the role of the Spirit transforming the life of a Christian when we deal with character and virtue education that is not found in a secular university? What is the difference, and how does that work out? So there's theological work that needs to be done there. To your second question as to whether we substitute the church, I think it's the whole question of what is the relationship of theological education with the church. We service the church. That is one of the possible paradigms of theological education in the church. And I think to the extent that we provide leaders of virtue and character, that will then benefit the church through a multiplier effect. Those leaders in turn will envision, I think what was it said something on homiletics this morning, where you said about, you went through your theological education and studied hermeneutics and little or nothing about homiletics. I'm imagining a theological, I sat in an accreditation visit a few years ago, and I sat in a class with, it was actually in the region here, and there was a very long series of lectures on JEDP and the authorship of Deuteronomy. And I looked at the notes of the student, and there were pages and pages. They'd been going through this for weeks. And I was wondering, okay, when these young pastors go into a church, does the church need to know about the authorship of Deuteronomy as the most crucial thing for the region? And if we are giving time to that and taking away time from the formation of the character and the virtue of those leaders who can be peacemakers, for example. Peacemaking is not a technique. It is not an academic subject. It is a matter of virtue and character of the people who make peace. So, don't get me going, but thank you for the question.
We are taking the microphone away.
There's no 7-minute limit here, though.
Marcel!
Keep on asking.
Greg.
My question is for...
Shout loud. Otherwise I will have to repeat.
Thank you, Katerina, for your presentation. Your presentation was very interesting for me in how you reformulated libraries as resource learning centers or something like that. and that just, I never even made the jump there, how you did, and that's very helpful, because I've thought often about all of the what technology makes available for us now, and it seems to me like the publishing industry in some ways, while they make use of it, does it really help get information out to people in need? And so my question really is for this particular region, where resources are limited, and where it's difficult to perhaps get books, especially in education where things are being published so quickly. You know, in a few years, you're already looking at a new edition or something like that. In this region, is the technology that's now available for digital resources going to make, will it make resources more available to students and practitioners? And what are some steps that schools can take to start bridging that gap between being that physical place of physical books and a learning center that makes use of this new technology?
Well, I'm one of my last sentences would have been technology is not the solution, it's a human factor. A human needs to unlock the technology. Technology is available. Electronic resources are available. The question is how they are organized, how they are unlocked, how they are brought to the people, how the people are made aware and taught to search, search strategies, and how then they are empowered. Because it's not only about the 2-3 years at Bible school or training center, it's about lifelong learning. And they will have to, we live in an information society, they will have to cope with that. So I think that technology is available, and there's also a lot of materials around which can, in different languages. Even, I know theology resources, theology is a very slow discipline to get online, to become available. But even in other languages, there is a lot of materials around, and I'm sure all of you have their little packages of ebooks, legal, unlegal, but that's a different question. Personal use, educational use has some privileges, but are they organized? It's about access, organization, and that's what libraries usually do, catalog, and that's kind of the intellectual access, unlocking. Is it organized? Is it made available? Is it possible to preserve it? Like books, we take care so that they last longer. Technology is changing very quickly, so maybe my library, my collection is in some format which is in 5 years not available anymore. But yeah, and I'm sure every school has some enthusiast who is very much into that. Maybe it's not the librarian. Resources are a task of the faculty as well, So this cooperation and then, bringing it together and making it accessible. And technology allows that. So it is available. But it needs some professional, and searching into this direction that to have it open for others.
Thank you very much, Katerina. Brat Lazar.
Yes, thank you. My question is for Fyodor. My English is limited, but let's start to translate. Okay. Koje elemente držite bitnim u oblikovanju kurikuluma za određeno područje?
Which elements do you want are necessary for a certain area of theological education or curriculum?
Well, it depends on the area itself. For example, if we are talking about leadership program or we are talking about practical theology. But the most important, as we discovered, and here I am on the same page with the Marvin, is that now we discovered that all programs are missing this spiritual formation, character formation, ethics as a separate subject. These two would be a part of any area. So we would consider this as a main component that is missing, because as I said, we are good in doing informative and formative components, but when we come to the transformational or even deeper, that's what we miss. We miss this spiritual formation kind of courses. We miss this academic and yet, sorry for this word, mystical part of the training. And that's where I see the spiritual formation. Because even the spiritual formation courses, for example, on our program, we have invited 4 different professors. And even the spiritual formation course become a highly academical, explain everything, it's focused only on spiritual disciplines per se, and there is no this, spirituality to it. So it becomes an academic course in itself. And then you have another kind of angle to it. It can be too mystical. So you basically simplify it to the fasting, prayer, reading the Bible. And I cannot explain it, but I sense it that kind of courses should be both.
We are approaching a very holy hour. It is coffee time in 3 minutes. So Juliana has the chance to ask probably the last question. Very spiritual before the coffee.
Thank you, Maria, and thank you, Fyodor. Your presentations were very inspiring for me. But then the main question is that because what you have presented to us is really so, it looks big. It looks like you tend to encompass so many different things. So my question is, how do you actually do it? Do you have a large teams of people? Are those people in your teams, do they specialize in different areas? How do you actually do it? Because I know what we are facing with now. We are such a small team and we are trying and managing and juggling different things, and we are not able to really fulfill all of it which has been asked from us. So how do you cope with this thing? That's the question for you. And a question for Anne-Marie about the ODC. I know from my own experience how important the ODC is for PhD students. And I know that the students usually stress that we can have mentors for ourselves as one of the crucial points. And the other point is that we have time to do our presentations in front of the group. So what do you think, what are the benefits of these 2 things for the students, but also for the mentors? Thank you.
I will answer briefly. I said that this is rather a challenge to us, and we are trying to kind of embrace unembraceable things. But two things I will mention. We come to realize that all our teachers, theology teachers, are very good in theology, but very poor in pedagogy and psychology. We don't know how to teach. We have the content which to teach, but how to deliver it in a proper way, in a pedagogical way, how to deliver it in a way that it would do something with your listeners, in our case students. We don't have that. So now we have, in our seminary, we plan every year, at the end of the year, we plan the days of professional development. So we would focus for the last few years to train our teachers in the area of pedagogy, classical pedagogy, innovative pedagogy. And then we also now develop one of the most developing department at our seminary is psychology and counseling. And we would invite our psychology teachers to help us how to build our courses in a way that there will be not just theology components, pedagogy and psychology as well.
Yeah, In the case of a decentralized school, we really had to restructure how we think of the school management, administration, and faculty as well. For us, it meant that we need to have both the general faculty or the central faculty, but also multiple faculty in each context. It can only be done through a constant faculty development and even administrator, coordinator support system and training and developing them continually, but also networking. We have been able to recruit faculty members who teach at different seminaries and schools within their contacts and take part-time jobs with us as well. So actually our faculty has grown and we have become richer in that sense. So we work with a large faculty, but it takes a lot of concentrated training and support system. And for librarians as well.
I will briefly add that, sorry, we have like residential programs which we have young people, and then we have non-residential when we have adults, and we have to also take into our mind or in consideration the age groups in terms of age pedagogy. How do we train different age groups?
With regard to the benefits for the students of the ODC program, we have students who are already enrolled in an existing PhD program all over Europe. Some are interested in doing a PhD and they come just for 2 weeks. But I think the benefit for them is that, well, they do have their official supervisor, but unfortunately, in many PhD programs, they do not get adequate supervision. So in this program, they get much more intensive supervision by one mentor or sometimes by 2 mentors. And I think what is very beneficial to each one of them I've experienced, that each morning one of them presents his or her theme of a topic of the PhD thesis, and the others think with that person on that particular topic. So who is learning? We all learn from each other, from the presentation, and also the presenter is learning. So warm welcome to all of you who are enrolled in a PhD program or planning to do so, to register for this summer's program. We have a few places left.
My sixth feeling is that the coffee is boiling. So we have to stop at this moment. Sasha, sorry, you have to ask your questions in private.